gorgeous. So my last video I talked about the mini moon and we had 0 break. So there was our wedding, our mini moon, and then we went home, stayed home for a night, and then it was right back into wedding. A friend of ours got married the weekend after us, and this was totally our fault. Their wedding, so they were already married. They got married during COVID in 2020, and we had misremembered what their original date was versus the new date they picked. And then when we went to our venue, the only day they had open was the weekend we picked. They basically had every weekend open except the week of their wedding, so at least we avoided that. But yeah, we just totally spaced on it. Totally our fault. They were very cool about it, and it still went off very well, regardless of the fact that it was 2 weekends in a row. There was some overlap with Jake's friends, because it's Jake's friends from college were the ones that had gotten married, and this was their vow renewal. But everybody was totally cool with it, and they were just down to have a good time. Their wedding wasn't a destination per se, so ours was maybe 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes for most people. Probably less actually for Jake's friend group. They got married in Duluth, Minnesota, so that was a 2-hour or so drive. So it was it wasn't a destination, but it was a little further out of the way. But everybody still made it. Nothing happened because of our wedding being first, so I was happy about that because I didn't want anything to go wrong. And no one got COVID, so we were all perfectly fine at their wedding. No one got COVID from their wedding either, so it was pretty great to somehow avoided all of that completely. I didn't expect it to happen, but it did, so thank goodness. We got very lucky. So to get into their actual wedding weekend, we got home from our mini moon on Thursday night. Originally, we thought we'd be doing our circle tour and we'd be ending up in Duluth. So we'd originally booked our hotel room for Friday night. So we didn't actually need to go up on Friday, but since we already had our hotel room booked, we decided to go up there. And a couple of our other friends were up there too, so that made it all work out. We got there afternoonish sometime and just unpacked. We didn't really do anything beforehand. We did meet up with some friends a little later once they arrived at the hotel. And our plan was to go to Vikra, which I did a little unboxing of their canned cocktails in a past video because I love Vikra Distillery. It's very cool. So we were going to go there, but we left a little late. And then by the time we got there, they were they had a long wait, and their wait list was basically full until they closed. So we're okay, we can't go there tonight. That's unfortunate, because our friends hadn't been there before. So since Vikra was so busy, we ended up walking down the road. Someone had Googled on their phone, and they found a place called Hoops. I think it was Hoops Brewing or Hoops Brewery, something like that. So we just walked down the street, and we went there, and we each got a couple beers. The ones I got were pretty low alcohol. I can't even remember what they were anymore. But they were decent, and the place was hopping, so it was a pretty good time. We just enjoyed catching up with people. And after that, we were actually kind of hungry. There weren't a lot of places that were open later, because we went out late. I can't remember what time it even was. And we ended up walking. It was a little bit further across town, but we walked to an Herbert's and Gerbert's so we could get some subs. And then we ended up back at the hotel room playing Played Up again. So that was our whole Friday. So then Saturday was supposed to be a bit more of a chill day. Their wedding, their vow renewal wasn't until 5 o'clock at night. So we just kind of had the whole morning to do whatever we wanted. Someone told someone, I don't know, one of our friends said, we should go to Uncle Louie's and get breakfast. It's a good, breakfast spot. So, okay, and we walked there. It was, Jake and I didn't mind, but some of our friends was it was a long walk for them. And it was very windy that morning. And then once we did get there, the line was out the door. And we look inside, and there aren't very many tables. And it didn't look like there were many tables we had 5 people with us, and it looked like most tables were 2 seats or 4 seats. And it didn't look like there'd be room for us in there for a while, even if we did wait. And we were pretty hungry, and it was cold outside. So we decided to walk down the road. Our friend had Googled, and they're oh, this place has pretty good reviews. Let's go there. It turned out to be kind of a dive. So it was called Roundup Bar and Grill. And it was 10 or 11 a.m. and you can tell people in there had been drinking and were doing pull tabs and stuff. This place also didn't have big tables, and so we went to this corner booth that was kind of too small for us, but we all sat there, and I was a little sketched out, and I could tell Jake was also, but our friends were totally cool with it, and they didn't care at all. So I'm just okay, I'll just roll with it. But Jake mentioned once or twice we should go somewhere else, but I think our friends just wanted to eat, so they didn't care where we were. We ended up ordering, they had like a really big breakfast menu, bigger than I expected. And we ended up getting just kind of like like an egg and ham sandwich. That's what I got. I think Jake got something similar. But I felt bad because Jake was kind of stressed out about being there. And then he got his sandwich and he accidentally, since we were so crowded at the table, he accidentally dropped it and it fell on his pants. And they were like his nice pants that he was going to wear to the wedding that day. Because he had a different pair of pants that he'd worn the night before. But then one of our friends had pointed out that there was a big hole in the crotch that none of us had noticed beforehand. He just noticed while he was like playing video games and laying down. He's like, whoa, like, are you cool with that? So Jake, since he had a hole in his one pair of pants, he'd only brought one other pair of pants because it was only a 2-day trip. He got those dirty. He's like, well, I don't want to wear these. So after we finished eating, he was stressed out. And I told him there's a Duluth trading company across the road. And they're supposed to have like really durable sort of work clothes. But I figured we could find probably a pair of khakis or something there. So we went back to our place, and then we like got all our, I don't even remember why we went back to our hotel room, but we went back to our hotel room, and then we went to Duluth Trading Company, and Jake found some new pants, and he was feeling a little better about the situation. And from there, so we were hanging out with the same friends we hung out with the night before. Since we hadn't gotten to go to Vikra the day before, we decided like, we're going to go this afternoon. It'll probably be less busy. Like, it is a Saturday, but it's an afternoon, right? It was still very busy. When we got there, I think we got basically the last table that was open. We sit down, and my friend orders the cocktails that I had tried, the canned cocktails. They had basically a tasting of that, so she got that. I got something called like a Route 66, which was a very seasonal fall sort of drink, like a giant ice cube with their logo in it. And we also got a Spirit Flight. I wasn't super impressed by any of them, like on their own. They're better in things to me. I know Jake likes to sip Aquavine, but I wasn't huge on sipping it. The one I did like sipping was an herbal liqueur that they had, which we ended up buying there. And we also each got like 2 glasses before we left. So it was a worthwhile trip. We had a good time. We kind of lounged there for like 2.5 hours or so, something like that. And there was a ice cream shop across the street called Love Creamery. So we went over there and we all got ice cream cones too after the fact. I guess we had breakfast. We didn't have like a lunch. We just had booze and ice cream. So, I mean, there you go. Oh, we also did stop at a candy shop, and Jake got a caramel apple on a stick. It was like, I think it was supposed to be a pecan pie flavored caramel apple that he got. And he gave me a couple pieces, but I didn't really want any because I was full from everything else. But it was very good, and it kind of really bumped up the morning we'd had. So after that, we'll go back to our rooms, hang out, just kind of like zen for a little bit before we get with everybody else. So we met up with same friends that we'd been hanging out with the whole time, because they were on the same floors. That's just like around the corner. So we met up with them. One of the people we'd been hanging out with was officiating this wedding. He's a friend who was officiating. He'd officiated their original wedding in 2020, and so he was re-officiating their vow renewal. So he was kind of like, he felt a little stressed out. He was practicing his lines and stuff. So we just went with the couple that we were friends with, and we went downstairs, and that's where we met pretty much like all of Jake's college friend group was downstairs. They were all just in the hotel lobby, and we're like, hey, how you doing, everybody? So we're all catching up, and we're walking, and the hotel we were staying at was just across the street from where their wedding venue was. So it was just like us. They did something just very easy. They just picked a spot that was close by and found a hotel that was nearby. The hotel also had a walkway, like a skywalk, so you wouldn't have had to go outside in the cold if it was very cold. But it wasn't very cold, and the skyway was kind of like in a weird back place, like, so it was kind of hard to get there from our room, so it would have taken more time to use that than to just walk to the building. So we did that, went inside, said hello to our friends who we saw. We didn't see the bride, but we saw the groom hanging out in the entryway and talked to him. Then we went and got our seats, and we're just chatting with everybody. 5 o'clock comes and nothing happens. So we're like, okay, well, we're just like, whatever. The instrumentals are playing, and they had some good instrumentals. They played the Cowboy Bebop ending theme, which I love, the Real Folk Blues. They played an instrumental version of that. They played, I forget which song, but it was definitely a Lord of the Rings song, like you could recognize it. There are a few other very recognizable songs that I knew, but I couldn't remember what they were from, but I recognized them, and I thought that was very cool, and it reminded us of our wedding, because we kind of did the same thing, where people were like, oh, I think I kind of knew what that was, or I've heard that one before. And I love when people put their own spin on it and put in what's important to them in there. It's very neat. We're sitting there listening, we're chatting, and then 5:15 rolls around and nothing has happened. and our friend the officiant is standing up front. This is a different officiant. I'm just saying, you know, he's a different friend who is an officiant. He's standing up front, kind of awkwardly, like, you know, swaying back and forth. There's someone else up there with him. Maybe the DJ. I think it might have been the DJ, just kind of like hanging out, like trying to calm his nerves. Oh, and I didn't mention this place was also, it's called Grey Salon in Duluth. And it's also sort of an all-inclusive, kind of like what we had. So you basically walked into these doors and the chairs were set up and there was a little like ceremony space. But also, that was half of the space. And the other half of the space already had kind of tables set up. Not completely set up, but they were like there because they used the same area for dining. Anyway, and then 5:30 comes around and there's nothing happening still. And we're like, is everything okay? Like, we hadn't seen the bride all day. So we're like, did something happen? And we hadn't seen the groom for a while, obviously, because I'm sure he's dealing with whatever was happening. So we're just kind of like, I'm internally panicking. Like, is everything fine? What's going on? But everybody else is talking, whatever, having a good time. Music's still playing. 5:45 comes around and we're like, what's going on? But just a little after 5:45, the doors opened. And so then the music changes and people start walking in. They start going down the aisle. It's great. They get to the front and we're like, thank goodness everything's okay. Everybody's here. And they start the ceremony. It's a very short and sweet. I know I keep saying it was like 5 minutes. Jake's like, it was like a 3-minute ceremony. It was such a short ceremony. I feel like it was a little bit longer than that, but I don't know. I don't have a concept of time. They did a great job. The officiant did a great job. They did a Rickroll in there. Like, do you vow to never give each other up? Do you vow to never let each other down? It killed me. I love that. I'd kind of joked about doing that in our ceremony, but Jake's like, no, please don't. So we'd skipped it, but I thought it was really cool, and I was so glad I got to see that in person. We never told them that, but I thought that was really neat. And the ceremony, like, it was actually like, so it was like halfway through this like really short ceremony, someone comes in like a little bit before they started walking back down the aisle and were like, you know, pronounced married again. I forget what wording they used. So we're like, what was that? And that's when we found out later that the reason they'd stalled for so long was because the groom's sister was running late, and that's who it was who'd come in partway through this very short ceremony. So like, I feel like that sucks so much. They waited so long and finally they just gave up. They're like, we're just gonna do it. We don't care if she's here or not. We gotta go. Everybody's waiting. And then she's still like, and then she managed to show up just like a few minutes later. Just like, that sucks so much. I never asked them how they felt about the situation, but I'm sure they were probably just annoyed that it took so long to get there. So, but I can understand. She had like an infant, you know, what can you do? So like I said, this room was half set up. So there's the chairs there and then there's tables, but the tables were like really crammed together. So they needed us to all leave the room so they could get rid of all the ceremony chairs and space the tables out and make them all like more set up nicely, like with the drinks and, or like water and whatever they put on the tables. So we all had to leave the room and there was a little cocktail lounge. They didn't have an open bar or anything, which was fine. So we all just kind of grabbed a drink and hung out with our friends and, you know, just chatted. It's so hard to catch up with people when there's such a big group of people, especially because we hadn't seen each other. Like, basically our wedding the weekend before and then this wedding was like the first times we'd seen each other, like, in person. Some of us talk online and stuff, or like play games, but some of us just, like, a few of the partners of Jake's friends, like, aren't gamers, so I just hadn't talked to or seen them in a very long time. So it was kind of wild, where one's just telling me, like, oh yeah, I travel for work now, I have a new job, and I'm like, what? It's been so long. This couple, they didn't have a wedding party. They're just like, we're skipping it, we don't need it. They had witnesses sign the thing already. Like, they just had a sibling, I think, on each side. And they didn't have them stand up during the vow renewal or anything. They're just like, no, we don't need it, it's cool. But one cool thing they did is the officiant handed out envelopes while we were at the cocktail hour. And me and Jake got one. It was basically like, oh, join us at the head table. And I was like, that's so cute. So there's like, when we go back in, there's this big ass head table, and the couple is at the front, like the short end, and we're like on the long sides, like on each side. It's huge. They told us later the reason they did that was because the venue told them whoever sits at the head table gets free champagne. And they're just like, yeah, well, we didn't like pay for alcohol, so we figured we'd give you guys free champagne to make up for it, which I thought was cute. And it was all just nice. Even without that, like, perk, it was nice to be thought of like that. It was really sweet. I was very happy to be included in that, especially because, you know, I'm like the spouse of a friend, so it was cool that I was at the head table and not just, you know, Jake. And they included everybody, like a big old harvest table, like it was all couples, except for those who like were single. And I was like, man, this is what I wish we could have done if we'd had like more space and we could have gotten more people. But what can you do? So that's what they definitely got that part right. And yeah, it was a really good wedding. They did the music choices a little like backwards from what we did. So in our wedding, we had like a lot of like sort of older like crowd pleaser songs first. And then it slowly like went into like the obscure stuff that Jake and I know close to the end of the night when we knew like the older people would be gone. This one, it was definitely like pop, like really hard, like these are the songs that like everybody plays at a wedding kind of. Like those all went first, and then somewhere in the middle, like they just started playing like the really old, like slower songs. And so then like the older crowd was on the dance floor. And then they tried to switch it back into like the really hype songs, but they didn't feel as hype anymore. And nothing wrong with that. And the DJ was like dancing and having a good time. And he was trying to work the room, and he had like a lot of people who'd been sitting were now up, and some people who'd been up were now sitting. And part of me like is wondering if this was our fault, because by the end of the night, most of like our friend group was just kind of sitting around chatting. Like none of us were really dancing. We definitely got up there for the last few songs, but for a while there we were just chilling. We were just sitting around talking about stuff. To be fair, the groom wasn't much of a dancer. He's not really into that. His wife was more of the dancer. She was going hard on the dance floor, and some other people were, but I'm not at all saying it was a bad time. It was a good time. I'm just like, oh no, did people dance less because they danced so much at our wedding? Or like, is it the music? Like I just didn't really know. And so I was like, feel like a little guilty about it. Like, oh no, this is our fault. But there's no real way of knowing, to be honest. One thing I also felt bad about, the bride had like this beautiful dress on, and she said, when the music was bumping like near the beginning, she's like, oh, I'm gonna go change into my second dress because I'm getting too warm. I need to like take this off because it was a heavy dress. So she left and she came back in her like shorter like party dress, and then that's when the music had switched, and so we were all like already sitting down, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. we definitely partied with her, but it took a minute. It was nice though to have kind of like a chill time. And two, like one thing we also missed out on, they went to a speakeasy as like an after party sort of thing, but Jake just wanted to go back to our hotel room. He was like, I'm done. I don't need to go to a speakeasy. I'm partied out. And so we went back, and also the bride went with everybody to the speakeasy, but the groom's like, I'm tired. This is way past my bedtime. So he also went back to the room. I'm sure he like probably stayed up and like greeted his wife in the morning, like that night, but he went with us and one other person, I forget who, and we just went back to the hotel room, and that was the wedding. And it was a really good time. Their centerpieces were really nice. I think they were that sounds terrible. I think they had like the kind that were like metal with like little glass gems like hanging from them, like kind of like a chandelier-ish sort of thing. This is one of those things, those details that like you focus on so much, but then like other people are just like, I think that's what they had as centerpieces. I think those were cool. Like, it was like, I worried so much about centerpieces. I'm like, I'm sure no one freaking remembers what the hell I did for my centerpieces. I'm sure no one remembers what my arch looked like unless they were looking at a picture. And these were all things I just worried about so much. It kind of gives you an extra perspective when you have two weddings back to back like that. And I was like trying to notice all this stuff because I just got married. So I'm like, oh yeah, how's this different? How's this the same? And it's funny how that works out. And yeah, their wedding was a little smaller than ours, but like it was still a party. Like it wasn't like, I know some people worry like, oh, my wedding's only 50 people. Like what if no one's on the dance floor? But it's like if your crowd dances, they dance. Like and even like I said, even though we were sitting around chatting, that was still a good time. Like I don't know, maybe since we're like in our 30s, a little older, but like it's still, we just like chatting with people. We just like to sit around and talk. So I had a really great time at the wedding, and I was glad we were able to make it this time because we hadn't made it to their original wedding, so due to like COVID and stuff. So it was great to be there. I was happy we made it. We didn't really do, I guess we did go to Vika and stuff, so we did kind of make it like a vacation, but it was places we'd mostly been before. We did like on Sunday, we went on like a little river walk like across from the hotel, and we stopped at, on the way home there was a place called like Dovetail Cafe that we stopped at, which we thought would be like cozy and cute, but really like it just took forever to get our food. So we were just sitting there forever. We got our coffee, like I got a matcha and Jake got a hot chocolate. We got those like right away, but our food took like a very long time, and I was like, oh geez, I want to like start heading home. It was funny. We didn't really get any chill time either because Sunday we get home, and then Monday we both started to work again. So it was just like a go, go, go ever since the wedding. which I don't mind at all. I like being go, go, go. I think Jake would have preferred to have more time at home in our bed or just like chilling, but it was a really good time. I feel like I keep saying that. I need to like script this out or something so I'm not just repeating myself over and over. My wedding was a lot of fun, but part of me is like, is it more fun to be a guest at a wedding or is it more fun to throw your own party? Because our wedding, we got to choose a bunch of stuff and do a bunch of things, but there's also a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people talking to you. You got a lot of things to do. Whereas where you're a guest at a wedding, you just kind of get to like hang out, party, talk, do whatever you want. You don't have any obligations to like do hair and makeup. You don't have to like do all this stuff. So yeah, I think there's pros and cons to everything, and I loved both weddings that we went to. So that's all I have to say for today. Have a good rest of your day.